Daniel had known Marcus since college, a man who seemed to effortlessly charm every room he entered. So when Marcus called with an invitation to a private dinner at his new countryside home, Daniel felt it was impossible to refuse. Just a few old friends, quiet night, good food, Marcus had said over the phone, his tone warm and insistent. That Friday evening, Daniel arrived just as the sun slipped behind the trees. Marcus greeted him at the door with a firm handshake and an almost too perfect smile. Inside, soft classical music filled the air, and a long oak table gleamed under the chandelier. Fine china and crystal glasses were arranged meticulously. 3 other guests, old acquaintances from college, were already seated, chatting lightly. At first, everything seemed normal, but Daniel noticed subtle oddities. The fireplace was cold, though a fire should have been crackling. The silverware was unusually polished, and the wine smelled faintly metallic. As appetizers were served, Marcus raised his glass. To old friends, and a night none of us will forget. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Daniel shivered, sensing an edge beneath the charm. From somewhere in the kitchen came a metallic clang, sharp and deliberate. Marcus didn't flinch. He simply continued speaking. As if the sound hadn't happened, Daniel's unease grew. Something about this dinner felt wrong, but he couldn't place what. The sense of expectation in the room was oppressive, almost palpable. A subtle glance from one of the other guests makes Daniel realize he might not be here entirely by choice. The conversation soon grew strained. Caleb, a tall, quiet man, kept glancing toward the kitchen as though expecting someone or something to appear. Emily, seated across from Daniel, fidgeted with her napkin, never tasting her wine. Daniel tried to distract himself, focusing on the appetizers. But the metallic scent lingered. Then his eyes caught something unusual on the wall. A framed photo of all 5 guests at the table. He froze. It appeared freshly taken, though no one had produced a camera during the evening. "Marcus, though, did you take this?" Daniel asked, his voice cautious. Marcus smiled faintly, leaning back in his chair. "I like to prepare things in advance." A ripple of tension passed around the table. Emily excused herself to get some air and walked toward the front door. She tried the handle and found it unresponsive. She pushed again. Nothing. Marcus rose from his chair slowly, calm and deliberate. "I'm afraid we're not done with dinner just yet," he said, his tone oddly casual. Suddenly, a scraping sound echoed from the kitchen, sharp and metallic. Everyone froze. Daniel's stomach knotted as he realized one of the knives from the block was missing. Daniel senses the harmless dinner is about to turn into something deadly. Emily backed away from the unyielding door, panic rising. Caleb tried the handle and even banged his shoulder against it. But it wouldn't budge. They were trapped. Marcus returned to his place at the head of the table, his composure unshaken. He poured himself wine slowly, eyes scanning each guest. "Please sit," he urged. "Dinner is getting cold." Daniel's unease surged. He approached the kitchen, intending to call for help. But one counter was incomplete. The long carving knife was gone. A chill ran down his spine. Then a scraping sound echoed again, coming from the pantry door. Daniel froze. The air grew heavy, metallic with tension. He stepped closer, then the sound stopped abruptly. The lights flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness. When they returned, the empty chair at the table now held a plate Daniel hadn't seen before. The meat on it glistened, still red, almost alive. The metallic scent grew stronger. Daniel realized they were no longer in a safe dinner, but in a carefully staged trap. But Marcus had orchestrated every detail. Each subtle smile, Each word of charm had been part of the plan. A distant scream pierces the house, and one of the guests has vanished from the table. The scream echoed down the polished hallway, abrupt and blood-chilling. Daniel's heart pounded as he spun toward the source, only to see Emily gone, vanished without a trace. Caleb shouted her name, banging on the doors, but the front door remained locked, unyielding. Marcus remained seated, calm, pouring himself wine. His eyes glinted in the dim chandelier light, cold and calculating. "Sit down, everyone," he said, voice smooth. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." Daniel's gaze darted to the kitchen. The knife block was missing one long carving knife, the one used for the roast. Daniel felt a jolt of fear. Marcus had carefully orchestrated this, using the knife as a tool of intimidation, maybe worse. He edged toward the pantry, floorboards creaking under his careful steps. Shadows stretched along the walls like living fingers. A faint metallic scraping repeated from behind the closed pantry door. Caleb grabbed Daniel's arm. "Don't. Just wait." Daniel's eyes flicked toward Marcus, who smiled faintly and raised his glass. "Dinner must continue," he said. A cold draft swept through the room, rustling napkins, rattling glasses. Then, a muffled thump came from behind the kitchen door, followed by a whisper, "Who's next?" The room went silent. The remaining guests exchanged fearful glances, realizing this was no longer a normal dinner. Marcus's carefully constructed charm had dissolved, revealing the trap beneath. Daniel realizes that Emily's disappearance is only the beginning, and the next strike could be anyone's. Daniel's pulse raced as Marcus signaled the waiter, or perhaps no one at all, to serve the next course. The platters emerged with eerie precision, the meat steaming as if freshly carved. Though no one had entered the kitchen, the remaining guests hesitated, knives hovering above their plates. Caleb whispered to Daniel, "We can't eat this. We don't know what's in it." Marcus's smile was calm, almost rehearsed. "Please," he said, gesturing toward the table. "Dinner is part of the experience." The metallic scent in the room grew stronger, mingling with the rich aroma of the roast. Daniel noticed subtle details. The wine glass on Emily's vanished place, now filled, trembling slightly. A chair rocking on its own. The shadows along the walls bending toward the center of the table. A sudden clatter behind the pantry made everyone jump. The long carving knife lay across the floor, glinting in the chandelier light. Daniel felt an urge to grab it, but knew that doing so might trigger something worse. The guests ate reluctantly, their motions robotic, their eyes flicking nervously toward Marcus. Every smile, every movement he made seemed calculated to enforce compliance, to test fear, to manipulate instinct. Then, from somewhere deep in the hallway, a blood-curdling scream erupted. It wasn't Emily. This time it came from the other side of the house. Daniel understands the real danger is not just physical, it's psychological. And Marcus is playing a deadly game with everyone at the table. The scream reverberated through the grand dining hall, shaking plates and rattling glasses. Daniel and Caleb exchanged a terrified glance. Whoever had cried out was gone, swallowed by the shadows of the sprawling house. The remaining guests froze, realizing the room was no longer a safe space. The metallic scent in the air intensified, thick and suffocating, mingling with the faint copper tang of blood. Daniel's mind raced. Marcus had carefully orchestrated this, timing everything for maximum control. A muffled shuffle came from the pantry, followed by a dragging sound. Daniel gripped the edge of the table, trying to stay calm. But the fear rising in the room was palpable. Every guest could feel the presence of something waiting, watching, calculating. Marcus remained unervingly composed, his eyes scanning the room. "Dinner is progressing beautifully," he said smoothly, though the tremor in the wineglass betrayed the tension in the air. Then came another scream, closer this time. "Emily." The sound was filled with terror, and it ended abruptly. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Caleb whispered, "We need to leave. Now." Daniel realized the door would not budge. The knives were missing. An escape was impossible. Marcus had trapped them in a deadly game. Each guest was vulnerable, each movement scrutinized. Daniel knows that someone or something is already among them, and the next victim could be anyone at the table. The dining room was thick with tension. Daniel's hands shook as he reached for his wine glass, pretending calm. Caleb and the remaining guests exchanged wary glances, every nervous twitch amplified by the dim chandelier light. Marcus leaned back, smiling faintly. "You all seem tense," he said. "Such a shame, considering the effort I put into preparing tonight." His eyes glinted with a cruel amusement. Daniel noticed subtle details that had gone unnoticed before. Small scratches on the table where someone had dragged a fingernail, a half-filled glass of wine in Emily's place, and the shadows along the walls, bending toward the diners as if alive. Then, quietly, Daniel overheard a whispered exchange between Caleb and another guest. Old grudges and resentments long buried had resurfaced. Insults traded, secrets revealed. Marcus had arranged this dinner to expose not just fear but betrayal. Every guest's past, carefully researched, was being used against them. The metallic scraping returned from the pantry. Daniel realized with horror that it wasn't just about knives, it was psychological. Marcus wanted to control reactions, to break people from the inside out. Another scream echoed from the hall, muffled yet filled with unmistakable terror. One guest bolted for the door, only to slam against the unyielding lock. Daniel understands that Marcus is exploiting more than fear. He is weaponizing every secret the guests have tried to hide. Daniel's stomach churned as the screams grew closer, mixing with the metallic scent that had plagued the dinner since arrival. The other guests were pale, their hands trembling as Marcus calmly poured himself wine. A sudden crash from the pantry made Daniel whip around. The door swung open on its hinges, revealing a shocking sight. A body lay crumpled across the floor. It was Emily, her face pale, eyes wide in terror. Crimson streaks marred her once pristine dress, pooling across the cold tile. Caleb tried to scream, but his voice caught. The knives, once neatly arranged, were scattered on the floor, some smeared with blood. The metallic scraping noise continued, coming from nowhere yet everywhere, echoing off the walls. Marcus's expression remained disturbingly composed. "Dinner, as you can see, has many courses," he said, voice calm but chilling. "Some more permanent than others." Daniel's mind raced. Escape seemed impossible. The house itself felt alive, trapping them. He scanned the room, noticing subtle clues. Faint footprints leading away from the pantry, a trail of crimson leading to a back hallway. The remaining guests pressed together, realizing they were now part of Marcus's deadly game. Every second they hesitated could mean the difference between survival and death. Daniel knows he must uncover Marcus's plan, or risk being next in the House of Horrors. The room seemed to shrink around Daniel. The chandelier flickered, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the walls. Caleb leaned close, whispering, "We need to confront him now, before it's too late." Marcus smiled, calm and almost playful. "Oh, I do enjoy a lively debate," he said. He gestured toward the table. and Daniel noticed the missing carving knife now gleaming in his hand. Every detail fell into place. Marcus's charm, the carefully orchestrated dinner, the disappearing guests, all designed to manipulate, expose, and control. Suddenly, Marcus's voice lowered, deadly serious. "I've always wondered which of you could survive fear, hunger, and secrets combined." He raised the knife, tilting it toward Daniel. A scream from behind the pantry echoed. Daniel realized the killer's reach extended beyond immediate visibility. Panic surged. One wrong move, one misstep could be fatal. The remaining guests huddled, trapped between the truth and Marcus's deadly intent. Daniel's mind raced, recalling small inconsistencies. The photo on the wall, the metallic scent, the carefully timed sounds. Everything had pointed to this moment, the confrontation. As Marcus advanced, Daniel prepared himself, aware that only quick thinking and courage could prevent another death. Every heartbeat amplified the tension, every shadow a potential threat. The knife glints under the chandelier light. Daniel realizes the true danger may not be Marcus, but the house itself. The knife hovered in Marcus's hand, gleaming under the chandelier light. Daniel's pulse thundered as he realized the house itself seemed to hold its breath. Walls closing in subtly, shadows bending toward the remaining guests. The metallic scent of blood lingered, mingling with the rich aroma of the untouched food. Marcus's calm smile had vanished, replaced with a predator's intensity. "Dinner isn't over until every course is complete," he whispered, stepping closer. Daniel's mind raced, recalling every clue. The photo, the missing knife, the screams, the disappearing guests. Every element had led to this moment. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the pantry. Caleb stumbled backward, wide-eyed, as the floorboards groaned. Out of the shadows emerged Emily, alive, clutching the missing knife, her expression defiant. Marcus froze for a heartbeat, unprepared. Seizing the moment, Daniel lunged. The knife was knocked from Marcus's hand, clattering across the floor. The guests moved in unison, pushing Marcus toward the locked front door. He struggled, fury and panic flashing across his face. The moment the door yielded to the combined effort, Marcus stumbled outside, disappearing into the dark night. The remaining guests collapsed into chairs, trembling, each aware that the danger wasn't entirely gone. The house, eerie and silent again, seemed to watch them, as if judging their survival. Daniel picked up his wine glass, now still and untouched. He realized the ordeal had left an invisible scar, a reminder of human fear, deception, and the deadly power of carefully orchestrated secrets. Some invitations carry more than hospitality. They expose the darkness within. And even when the threat leaves, the memory of it lingers forever.